SpectreVision Radio.
Welcome to Caribbean Mystics Podcast,
where we marry mysticism, superstition, and lore. I'm your host, Paulina.
And I'm your host, Gabrielle, and we are your resident Caribbean Mystics.
Join us today as we explore the depths of real supernatural stories
told by real people located right in our very own backyard. On this episode of Caribbean Mystics, we explore the mysterious case of the moving coffins inside Chase Vault of Barbados. For generations, locals and officials alike were baffled as heavy lead coffins shifted on their own in a sealed crypt. Was it trickery, natural forces, or something supernatural?
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Caribbean Mystics Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Paulina Creaky.
Hey, everyone. Welcome. I am your co-host, Gabrielle Carrard.
And if you haven't noticed, maybe we're a little nerved because this is officially our first episode of season 4 that we are recording, like official for YouTube and the season itself. So we're kind of like, visually, does everything look cool? And it's been a while. We've been on a hiatus for so long. We're kind of like, how do we do this again?
For sure. It's been such an interesting ride because I've had actually so much resistance to it because I know that we need to do this in order to make our podcast, take it to the next level while also being like, oh, it's so much work, man. Paulina and I just spent the last hour. We were supposed to start recording an hour ago. And we spent the last hour like adjusting this and adjusting that. All things, obviously, that are super important. And then also not really knowing if at the end of this, we would have done it all correctly. We could be on the back end wondering, wow, why did I sit that way? Why was my lip crooked?
Or just scrap the whole episode and start it over.
I'd be like, hey guys, we're gonna have to record again. I hope not.
We've done that before.
Yeah. Multiple times.
Yes. But you know what? Like, I think there comes like a kind of bravery of just being on camera all the time where you're just like, this is me. This is how I look. And you guys are not here just to see what we look like. You're here to hear the stories and the legends and the tales and the mysticism.
But that actually takes us into explaining why we're here. Like you guys are used to a particular type of content and we honor that. But we wanted to bring you more because we can offer more. And so one of the things that was really exciting for us is to determine what type of new content we wanted to bring and what stories we wanted to bring forward that we never actually got storytellers to tell. So we thought about creating this segment that we would do once a month where we would talk about a particular legend in the Caribbean, whether it has to do with an entity, a haunted place, or some sort of phenomena that just is known but isn't often coupled with the actual like beginning, middle, ending story that a person living with us today has experienced. I feel like I had to do a lot of disclaimers to be like really clear.
That's okay. You guys are going to get the point because we're just going to dive right into it. So this week, I got a story for you, Gabby.
Ooh, I've been excited ever since we decided to do this because I want to see what Paulina have up her sleeve. I've been thinking about what it could be, and I kind of theorize, we'll see if I'm right. I kind of theorize that it has something to do with the aliens because a lot of our episodes this season is centered around extraterrestrials and UFOs or just general cosmic experiences that don't have a really traditional explanation. So I'm thinking alien.
Really weird. It is really weird that we're getting a lot of alien stories all of a sudden.
I know.
But this What were you gonna say?
Proof that it is sitting in human consciousness. So I think a lot of us thinking about, the spaceships and the ET, and all of the disclosure we've been experiencing. And then I don't know about you, but there have been days this year, 2025, I've looked up into the sky and begged the ETs to just beam me up.
Uh, I'm sorry, you are on your own with
Harvest my blood in exchange for room and board. That's kind of where we're at. Things are crazy in the world these days.
I
I
got
just
you. I
feel like
got you.
that's just kind of where I am.
I mean, some of us prefer to be dissected like a frog, and some of us don't mind staying on Earth. It's cool. But, but no, this story is not actually about UFOs or ET or anything celestial. It takes place actually more underground in the island of Barbados. So let me tell you this. Have you ever heard of the mysterious Chase Vault before?
I have not. Funny you'd bring this up because I actually don't know very much lore about Barbados specifically.
Barbados has these mysterious chase vaults in the coastal town of Oistins, Christchurch. And this started as a British colony back in the day. But originally, this chase vault was built at this church by the Honorable James Eliot around 1724. This vault was literally underground. It was a stone vault about 6 feet wide, 12 feet deep. And like what most vaults do, you bury people in them or you place coffins in them for the dead. But what has happened over maybe 70 years since, yeah, I'm terrible at math, since 1724 to around the 1800s, these vaults, they would be moving, the lead coffins would be lifted, they'd be in disarray, and nobody knows exactly why. And it all started in 1724 when they were built. The man that built it, Eliot, he was buried around 1784. And then his wife, Elizabeth, died in 1792, and she was also put in there. So after the Elliot family had passed away, the vault was then bought by the Waldron family in 1807. And like people do, people die. When the tomb was open, it was discovered that the buried body of James Elliot, the previous family, and his wife was missing. Both their bodies were missing. And that was just the first report.
Pete, hearing you talk, I think if it's okay, can I interject into your
Please,
story? LOL.
please.
Okay. Just hearing you talk, something that comes to my mind that I just think is really crazy is that people were buying vaults like at this time. Like, I don't
Mm.
know, I'm not well versed on like the mausoleum, crematorial, burial vibe, but I just feel like there's something I think deeply disturbed within my soul that people were just out here buying dead people. I just feel like in the 1800s and the 1700s, they were doing a lot of fuck, okay? Like, that's during the time when they were like, you know, that's when Jack the Ripper was out there like killing people, like
Mm.
there was a certain level of like just strange during that time period. And I just feel like I could talk freely because nobody is alive today that have been a part of that time period. But when you
I'm
look back
also
when you look
sorry,
back
go
at some of
ahead.
the kingdom that they were doing, you kind of just wonder if everyone was experiencing lead poisoning.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't be surprised if they literally just bought the vault and they did not have. I think in this day and age we have a little bit more PC-ness, like,
Mm.
and I feel like we have a little bit more conversations now around ethics. And so I could see them in the 1800s being like, it's okay to buy dead people. Your dollar is your dollar. Where are you gonna put? You're gonna put great grandma Susie and great grandfather Jeff with this family that like nobody's met before that may have died like hundreds of years prior. It just, I don't know, that don't sit right with me, but I digress. Continue with
Mm.
your story.
Yeah. So it was super weird. The third family that bought the vault was the Chase family. So eventually, the first member of the Chase family who was buried at the vault was Mary Chase, and she was only a baby. She was like 2 years old, and she died in 1808. Her body was placed in a heavy metal casket
Mm.
and placed inside the vault. And then a few years later, the second member of the family, of the Chase family, who was buried was their teenage daughter, and she died in 1812. Just tragedy started striking this Chase family, and some people think maybe for good reason. You know, Thomas Chase himself was rumored to be a terrible person.
I was just going to say that sound like they get science work on them. Okay, this sound like they crossed the wrong person. And you know what else was prevalent during that time is like poisoning.
Mm,
So it could have been a situation where, there were particular herbs. Because again, when you think about the brutality of the slavery that happened on Barbados, I mean, I don't think any of us could give any of the enslaved people wrong for, doing a little mix up. What's also interesting about St. Bart's, not St. Bart's, Barbados, you see, you get me mixed up with the Caribbean
I feel
islands and
you.
all. What's particularly interesting about Barbados is they have a large indigenous population, because a lot of the indigenous people were coming up from South America to through Trinidad and then up the island chain. And so it could have been a mixture if we wanted to go down the route of like, spirituality, and belief systems. It could have been a mixture of indigenous belief systems and African belief systems that were
Mm,
being utilized during that time, like
hmm.
spiritual warfare.
Well, we did talk about that on one of our last episodes, Obia bloodlines,
Mm-hmm.
when we went into like a little bit of the history of Obia and how enslaved people used it as a source of power because they were in this dire situation of like no control. It was one of the few things that actually scared slave owners
Yeah.
and that they actually made it illegal. And it was
Mm-hmm.
almost like another war on like witchcraft,
Yeah.
like during the burning times. It was almost like that because they started hanging people that were accused, that gave them even a look, that said something in a foreign language, that they were just so hyper vigilant to anybody that would be doing any form of obia. They even had a whole book on it as well, on how to find people and hunt them down that were practicing this, and pretty much beat it out of the culture, beat it out of the people till it was nothing.
Yeah.
And then brainwash them with another form of religious practice to take place of their original cultural practices.
Yeah.
It's a really sad story. So who knows what happened to the Chase family? But after the teenage daughter died in 1812, they opened the vault again to put her coffin in. And lo and behold, the baby's coffin was upside down and placed in the opposite corner from where it was placed. So there's still kind of weird circumstances on how the teenage daughter died. A lot of reports say that she starved herself, or that Thomas was really abusive and that maybe she did it to herself or he did it. Nobody knows for sure. But Thomas Chase himself died about a month later after her. It's rumored that he committed suicide, but we're not sure. So in 1816, the vault was open and he too was put into the vault. And this was a metal coffin, a lead coffin, and it was so heavy. It took several men to carry it in. And when the vault was open to place the colonel in it, the baby's coffin was moved. So after Thomas was put in the vault, they sealed it up, and the Chase family was kind of done by then. The vault passed on to another family, and in 1816, it was opened for the burial of an 11-month-old baby named Samuel Brewster Ames. And again, the coffins were just in all disorder. And now we're talking about heavy lead coffins, okay, that take several people to move. Another person died, an adult, Samuel Brewster, which I'm assuming is the father of the baby. And he died in a bloody slave rebellion. And you know what's actually really weird? So the 11-month-old was put in September of 1816. And then the adult, Samuel Brewster, who died, was put in November. 16th of the same year.
That is weird because when you look at a Chase family, like that was those deaths happened in quick succession as well.
Hmm.
I'm not trying, let me tell
That's
you, I'm
true.
not trying to be an alarmist, but what I am is a realist. And I
A
really
paranormal
see,
detective.
yeah, like I just, because I'm here, like, I failed math class, but I'm here trying to keep the like math on what's going on with the frequency in which people are dying.
Hmm.
And I just find it to be really like an anomaly that there are three children buried in that vault. How many people altogether were buried there?
So we got the two families that originally built the vault.
Uh-huh.
Then we have the Chase family, right? Chase, his two daughters. I think that's six so far, right?
Yeah.
I'm terrible at math too. Good. Five, and then there's a few more.
Oh, I would be interested. I guess we'll have to wait and see the rest of the story, but I would be so interested to know about the other people that died because if they
Yeah.
died in quick succession too, I'm just letting you know that I feel like I'm onto something. But go ahead,
Maybe
P.
you are. So after the baby and the father, the two Samuel Brewsters were placed in the coffin. They died in the same year, a few months apart. Again, when they opened it to put them in, coffins had been moved. So now it's 1819. Someone else dies. Someone else owns the vault. It's a Miss Thomasina Clark in a wooden coffin, and they open it to put her in. And of course, what is going on? The coffins are in disarray. They're an absolute mess, and no one seems to know what the fuck is happening at this point. After each opening of the vault, the coffins were always put back in the original place, and then the vault was sealed. So, Thomasina Clark was the last body to be put into the tomb. The situation had become such a problem at this point that a Sir Stapleton Cotton, the governor of Barbados at that time, had wanted to conduct an investigation. So, what did they do? They opened the vault, they put sand on the floor so they could detect any footprints if someone was to come in case they broke into the vault. They also inspected for secret passages to see if someone was coming in from the inside, but nothing was found. And then when they closed it up, after they made all of this big hoobaloo, they closed it and they sealed it. It was like a marble slab that closed off the vault as well, and it was cemented in place. And the government officials put their official seal on the cement, including the governor. And it was kind of like a signet that they put on the seal to see if anyone had moved it. They would be able to see that the signet had moved as well, like the rings on it. So they thought for sure they're going to figure out if something was going to happen, then they would know who did it or if someone did it and whatnot. So the vault was opened in 1820. From the outside, nothing seemed disturbed, nothing seemed weird, and the seals from the government officials were still in place. But once the vault was open, sand was undisturbed, everything was undisturbed, except the motherfucking coffins. Okay. Again, all over the damn place. Heavy lead coffins. And I'm going to put a picture of how they were arranged originally. So you got like three coffins on the floor, adult coffins, the two baby coffins on top of those two, and then two more coffins stacked on top. Sorry, one more coffin stacked. There was the baby coffin was all the way in the far back against the wall. An adult coffin was on top of each other. They were toppled. It was just abnormal to say the least.
I just know when they was doing all that Arugudu, when they were throwing sand on the floor and putting special government seal on the door and all kind of thing. I just know the
Dude,
ghosts were laughing. I just know that they were so entertained.
if this was a paranormal doing, I mean, they had to be some very strong entities because, according to witnesses, the coffins looked like they were thrown about. And even one of the coffins, the baby coffins, reportedly had chipped.
I mean, I guess I haven't heard a lot of information around like the strength of demons or whatever. But like I just wouldn't put it past them. Like when you think okay, so this is just my theory, right? But I feel like energies are able to do a lot more when we aren't around than we think. Like I think that they just are. I hope I'm gonna explain this properly. But I feel like when I leave my house during the day, I expect that spirits are like all through my house, all through it. Because I just feel like when I'm there, I'm like an interruption to their like thing, right? I think that the ghosts that make contact are like specifically trying to make contact with you. But I do think that there are spirits that just cohabitate with us because they like the space or they used to live there or whatever. And I just feel like when I'm not there, they're able to do a lot more than when I am. With me being there, like okay, so this is, you see that question, this is gonna bring it all around, I swear. You see that question and it's be like, if a tree falls in a forest and no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound? We in
Mm-hmm.
our human mind and based off of our own human experiences anticipate a sound. But the real question is asking us to imagine that perhaps when we aren't in certain spaces, the world shifts like out of the perspective that we would have.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Mm-hmm.
could, like, it's almost like we're in a parallel dimension. And when we aren't, like, when I'm not at Sage, I anticipate that nothing's happening at Sage because nobody's there, selling retail or whatever, right? But that's only because that's what would make the most sense. Like, it's object permanence, like that you learn as a child, like a
Mm-hmm.
certain set of events. Like if I leave an object someplace, it'll be there in the same condition I left it, granted that no one else touches it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that we construct that in our mind as humans because that's what would make us feel the most safe. And we really do gravitate toward a world in which we can perceive the next step. But I invite us to be courageous and imagine that perhaps that is not the truth, and that when we aren't in spaces, activity is continuing in those spaces. Like the music right now, for all I know, could still be playing at Sage. The candles upstairs could be lit, and right before I come back in the morning, the spirits extinguish those things and put it back into place because that is the human world in which I've created.
Mm-hmm. I see what you mean. I often wonder that with the way that each of us perceive things. Like my version of the color blue could be your version of my color red,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yes.
But, and I'm like, how do we ever know?
Yeah.
I don't think we'll ever really know.
Yes, exactly. Like that's exactly it. And I guess it draws forth all of these like existential questions. But this is why I'm just like, I think like seeing the footprints in the sand, right?
Mm.
Some ghosts move through walls. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you think about all that you know about like hauntings and the way that entities kind of work, right? Why do some entities show up in physical form? You can see them, but they're like translucent. Or some people see entities and they're as real as you and me talking right now, right? Why do entities
Mm-hmm.
present differently in that way? Or some of them you don't
Yeah.
even see, they're just poltergeists.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think that nothing can be counted out in this story.
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, I don't know. My logical brain is trying to think what are some like logical grounding explanations, right? Like, could it have been an earthquake? Could it have been flooding? And these were also inspected and skepticized by the people back then as well. You know, one of the biggest explanations that they thought was flooding, but
Mm-hmm.
buoyancy with these coffins is a tricky business
Yeah,
because it would require a shit ton of water, and these were
lead.
around 300 pounds.
Yeah.
It took 6 grown men to carry these lead and metal coffins. So no one really knows. But on the paranormal side, apparently there was some reports of people hearing strange noises. Like people would hear screaming when they would walk by the vaults. People would hear um, footsteps and whispering, and it supports the other side as well.
I find this case to be very captivating, and um, I have heard of things happening in like graveyards, cemeteries, like you see a passing, person, or you get a feeling or anything like that. But I don't
Mm.
think I've ever heard of an instance where the activity was actually so intense that that's what happened. Because when you think about like graves being strewn around a room, with coffins that are made of lead, like that
Yeah. And
for me
why?
feels emotional. Yeah.
But
Like,
also disappearing. Let's not forget
yeah.
about the two coffins and bodies in the beginning, the first two that disappeared.
That feels emotional to me. Like that doesn't feel like a normal haha hee hee, I'm bored,
Mm.
I'm curious hunting. Like that feels like there is something like a depth to that I find to be very interesting. But when you were
Mm-hmm.
talking about these lead coffins, just a slight like deviation from this conversation. I was super curious about why they were making coffins out of lead. And so if anyone was interested like I was, I ended up finding online that part of the reason they made the coffins out of lead is so that way it would slow decomposition.
Mm.
But then I got stuck because I'm just like, why does that matter? Like if we bury in, you see what I'm saying, Paulina?
Yeah.
Back in the 1800s and 1700s, we were doing some weird shit. Because
Mm-hmm.
why would we need to slow decomposition after burying people in the ground or putting them in the vaults?
I need to talk to a mortician because, like, don't we do it today with embalming people and thing, or is that to help prevent necrosis
But
or
are
like
those
rotting?
lead? Aren't
I
those
don't know.
caskets like made of wood and like
No, no,
fiberglass?
but I mean, like, aren't they preserving the body in a sense when they inject it with like,
I think they,
embalming and
yeah, I think they preserve the body until like the wake or the funeral. Like
mm,
they
okay,
do,
gotcha,
like
gotcha.
if I die today, I
Makes
anticipate,
sense.
God forbid,
I regress. I
I,
digress.
yeah, I anticipate that in 3 weeks or so, they would have done like, had me ready to go out and be viewed. Even though that's not the kind of death I want to have. So let me just put on the record now. I would like to be cremated and sprinkled on Melty Bird Beach.
I like to
Um,
be buried with a tree.
yeah, okay, very good. So we have this enshrined. But I was saying that if I die and 3 weeks from now is my wake and my funeral, it makes sense that they would want to like embalm me because the rigor mortis, like the onset of rigor mortis, is very quick. Within 6 hours, rigor
Mm,
mortis has done already started on your body. And I know that because I used to look up serial killers. So
mm,
it's just
you're
like
sick.
it makes sense why now we do the whole embalming thing because we want to preserve the body for
Mm,
whatever like rites and rituals, the family
got
wants to
you.
do to conclude that life.
I should talk to one of my neighbors. She recently joined my our book club, and her husband is a mortician
Mm,
and works in the field. Totally off
yeah.
topic, but when they moved here to the house, so for those that don't know, I live in Northern California now. The house had a mysterious string of deaths as well. The
Mm,
family members died. Like I think it was a wife. I'm not sure. Maybe the kids. Like, and then the husband was there alone and had sadly committed suicide in his car in the garage. And nobody found him until weeks later when his pets started to eat him. And I don't know how they got in the car or the garage. I don't know exactly. And then once the house was emptied, it was abandoned essentially. And I think the garage was left open because then a pride of mountain lions moved in. to-
Paulina, it's getting worse as you
and
continue
I know
this.
that that's true because one of the girls at my book club, this is the book club gossip. One of the girls in the book club was saying she's neighbors. She would see these lions go in and out of the house, like the garage. They occupied. And I'm here wondering, like, how do real estate agents get them out to sell this house to now the woman that owns it in my book club? But yeah, that's just a little side story for you guys there.
That is intense. P.
It just, my ADHD brain brought it
Okay,
up
wait,
because
wait,
you were
wait.
talking about these bodies and then the lead coffins.
You told us a nasty story, so I'm gonna tell you guys one.
Okay.
So my father was a police in the police department in the Virgin Islands, and so obviously he's seen some pretty macabre things. And one day he told me this story about how there was a house and there were neighbors that were around the house. Now, let me preface this with the Caribbean region gets hot. It's during summertime. Okay. A lot of homes don't have AC down here either. So because we always have like the trade winds that blow through and keep it cool, and like AC is like a new, more modern thing here, but it's not what people generally have in their homes. Anyway, I promise the story is worth it. So he goes on a call, and the neighbors are saying that the house next door smells. And they don't know what the stench is, and it's been there for about a week and whatever, whatever.
Mm.
And so it had to have been longer than a week. Maybe it was like a month or so.
Oh God.
So he goes on the call, and him and his partner show up to the house. And as you arrive to the house, you already smell in a stench. And the way he describes the scent of the dead is that it is a scent that is unmistakable and unforgettable. And there's nothing else that is like it when you smell like a dead body, human body. And so immediately as they open the door and they take a whiff of the air, they know what's happened. And so they approach the home, they like knock on the door, they call out, whatever, whatever. Nobody answers. So they ended up going into the home. And as my father opened the door, all of this sludge, like liquid and stuff, came out of the door.
Oh my, wait, the front door
Yeah. And there were
or
a
like
whole
a
bunch of
bedroom door?
like flies, and because it was so hot and the person was there for so long that the body, like, I don't want to say it liquefied because that's insane, but I guess it exploded from the heat. Yeah, girl. You told a nasty story, so I was just like, oh, let me tell my story too. Um, yeah, girl. So it's just like this is
Oh,
why
that's
I'm
awful.
also kind of intrigued by this whole like lead thing, because I even wonder if they were embalming at that time. So the way that they describe the like the graves all over the vault and this and other, it to me it feels like the bodies were kind of falling out of there, like their
Mm.
caskets, and like that's what it would make it sound like. And so I'm just like how are the bodies, like we're talking about like 50 to 70 years worth of like storytelling, like what condition were the bodies in, you
Mm-hmm.
know
Yeah.
there's just a lot
And
here.
there is. Well, after that final chaotic moment of opening the vault, that was the last time that they opened it because the governor was like, nope, everybody out. And he took all the bodies out. Everybody was out and he buried them in different places. And to this day, the vault remains open. There's no more slab. You can actually go down to Barbados today and go visit
Mm.
if you like and take a little tour. And 200 years later, still a mystery.
I mean, I would go there. That sounds like a
Hmm.
place that I, as much as I'm into like the scary stuff or whatever, I do have my limits. Like there are certain places that I'm just not
What's
interested.
your limit?
Like I'm not really interested in seeing Annabelle, you know.
Mm.
Miss Girl has been doing her world tour, so one day we'll be talking about that, and the havoc she's wreaked on in the
Is this right?
country.
So I've only heard a little bit because during our hiatuses, I tend to slink away from the darkness because I am so enwrapped in it when we start doing
Yeah,
our show. But I just heard a little bit. And for our listeners too that don't know what's going on with Annabelle, who is she to the others that don't know
that
that might be
girl is a
listening?
menace. But I
I've been
think
seeing some TikTok posts.
I think my good sis in Christ, Annabelle, might actually be on her redemption arc,
Mm,
because I just feel like when you look at like the burning of the plantation that people are using to like do weddings and stuff, like
mm-hmm.
essentially desecrating the memory of what's happened there. Um, I just feel like, the path to hell paved with good intentions. And I just think that like Annabelle being there at that particular time is just like super interesting to me. Like, what are the
Wait, you're
chances?
talking about the doll, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
So like,
haunted doll,
yeah.
escape from the museum.
No, she didn't
Is this
escape.
what happened?
No, no, no.
Okay, tell
Oh,
me.
okay. So The Conjuring is putting out their last movie, and as such, they decided that they were gonna take Annabelle with them on a road tour. Now, Ed and
The
Lorraine,
real Annabelle
yes,
or the prop?
no,
Okay, the
no,
ragdoll.
Annabelle in the flesh. So they so they decided to take Annabelle with them to go and, like ting the movie, advertise the movie. And so on their tour through the United States, one of their stops was New Orleans. Mind you, Ed and Lorraine Warren said that Annabelle needed to be left alone, right? In their last like information about the dolls and the haunted objects they left behind in the museum,
Mm.
they were just like, y'all can never take Annabelle out of this room and out of the box. Okay. But anyway, a few days after Annabelle showed up to New Orleans, um the plantation, the I can't even remember, not away
I
plantation
remember hearing about that.
started
Okay.
to burn. The literal fire department could not out the fire. And we've seen that same dynamic happen here in the Caribbean, where when there's a place that's particularly energetically charged, it takes a lot for like the flames to go out. And in some cases, the flames regenerate and stuff. And so
Mm.
that was the case. It burned for so long that they essentially couldn't save anything. And it's crazy because that's a super popular plantation because it's aesthetically beautiful.
Mm.
But people have been very vocal of the fact that like it is a blatant disregard for history and for the ancestors of the people who like were enslaved on that land. um some who lost their lives, were brutalized, like rape, just all the things for people to like turn that into like a destination wedding for rich people, and what is usually rich white people. um
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, the situation with that was the situation with Annabelle. But the reason I was bringing her up, what was I saying when I was talking about her?
She was on her redemption arc.
Oh yeah, like I just feel like she was on her redemption arc and we love to see it, but it also underscores my point. I think when I talk about a lot, it is we are so used to experiencing these um events, right, from a particular lens, and they're usually like a negative lens, a scary lens. I just think it's so helpful. Yes, I know that evil exists, but I also think it's super helpful to always view the stories with like these compassionate eyes, because like when you think about a story of like the Chase Vault, it's just like these people were probably wealthy. If you look at the
Mm-hmm.
timeline and who their families were, they were probably people that owned slaves. um, and they probably weren't very kind because, point two and point three go mutually exclusive. You can't be a kind person and enslave people, period.
I'm
um,
pretty sure they were. They were all
yeah,
like white British colonists.
yeah, because they had like a vault, like they owned things, like I just have to
Yes.
believe that they were engaged in that way. And so I think that when we look at like the story like this, it's just like nothing nefarious I think happened, but it's super easy to walk away and have this like fearful, like, oh my god, like why would this,
Mm.
you want to do a cleansing or a clearing. And I just don't think that that's always all right. Like sometimes the land
Mm.
has its own like karmic debt to be repaid. One more thing that stands out to me, because I know that we're getting to the end of our time, is that sometimes I wonder when you see instances like this where things are happening in the graveyard or the cemetery. Back during ancient times, they had like a really robust like um, process for burying people, or even when you look at like indigenous wisdom and some of the African belief systems, when you look at their burial rites, right, they'll have like a whole montage. They'll have like the funeral, you know, in Jamaica they do like 9 nights, where it's like 9 nights of like memorializing the life that's passed away. Sometimes it's encapsulated with like food and dancing and drumming and like a celebration of life that goes on for 9 nights, right? With the belief system that the spirit travels for 9 days. And so the reason I bring this up is because I wonder, you know, like if there is something to these ceremonial practices and when negated, if they can create instances where the spirits are truly unsettled in certain areas. So sometimes I just wonder if maybe negating particular steps of the like burial process really does make it hard for spirits to like actually move on. A really great
Mm.
example of this is like I was just reading up on indigenous burial practices or ancient burial practices. And one of their burial practices from Northern Europe that I thought was really interesting is that they would, when someone would die, when they were carrying the casket to the burial ground, they would follow the ley lines of the earth, and they would only walk along those lines with the deceased because they believed that if you deviated from the ley lines, or you were like walking in a zigzag fashion, the soul would be confused because up until that point it was believed that the soul would still be following the body. And so if you don't walk in a straight line and if you don't walk along the ley lines of the earth, the soul would become confused and it would
Mm.
have a harder time to transition.
Very interesting. I wish we had more depth to our death as well,
Yeah.
as far as like death rituals, because so much of that depth has disappeared unless you're like in a very tight knit community, culture, country that
Yeah.
still practices things. But I think a lot in modern day, it's not as common,
Yeah.
especially I think in the US too. It's just like you go to a funeral director and they, you say a few nice words. And
Everybody go
I miss
home.
that. I want depth to my death.
Yeah. I get that. And it's one of the things that I think we just could do better at as a people. Like, I don't feel like we visit our loved ones who've passed away enough. We don't take care
Mm.
of their graves enough. You know, we don't have that moment of time where we memorialize those who have passed. Um,
Oh,
yeah.
this reminds me of my family's grave in St. Thomas. And
Hmm.
I think we've talked about it before a few years ago as well. And maybe I'll save this story for another episode, but it has to do with my family's graves being constantly desecrated and disrupted. On a side note, I forgot to mention that this story of the Chase Vaults in Barbados, we originally recorded something for it on one of our very first episodes way back in 2022. And we interviewed a gentleman by the name of W. St. Cyr, who wrote a book about the Chase Vaults, amongst other books as well about his own personal experience. I'd pull up the audio, but the audio came out so terrible that we didn't use it ultimately. We decided to pass on publishing that episode. But I should hit him up again now that we've upgraded a lot of our specs and see how he's doing because he had a lot of interesting things to say about it. And I'll probably put a link in our episode notes as well for anybody that's interested in checking out his book or checking out more information about the Chase Vaults in Barbados from a local.
I love it. And I love being able to support authors. How you the amount of work that goes into like authorship and writing books is like insane. So I like to support, especially Caribbean authors. You know, I'm partial. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I really enjoyed this story, P, and I really enjoy. I feel like there was a depth of cultural nuance here. I appreciated getting to learn a little bit more about the history. But the situation with the vaults, I don't think I've ever heard of something like that happening before. And
Me
so now I
neither.
feel like I gotta do research.
Mm-hmm. And if anyone listening, you got any more inputs or you're from Barbados and you know a little bit and want to, you know, give you 2 cents.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe I said something wrong and you're like, girl, that's not the right. You missed this one
Mm-hmm.
part. Just you call me out. It's okay.
And if you have a
We take it.
Caribbean legend too that you want to hear us kind of like deep dive into, tell the story of history, or listen to my commentary, let us know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think we have wrapped it up for today.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for joining in on this segment and let us know what you think in the comments. Subscribe, like to our YouTube, our Instagrams, our socials. Leave a comment, leave a review. It helps us a long way. Um, we're so happy that you're here with us.
Absolutely. And we are so happy to have all of these new ways to connect with you, the visual and the audio, and then all of the social media accounts and the email. And now you could text us, but that comes to email using the app, and it's just like a thing. So now we're all like friends. LOL. But I hope you guys have a beautiful day. We will see you next week, Thursday. You know what it is.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Caribbean Mystics Podcast.
If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to share with your family and friends. Like, follow, and subscribe to keep up with all of our spooky Caribbean content.
Do you have a story you'd like to share that took place in the Caribbean? Email us at caribbeanmysticspodcast@gmail.com. That's caribbeanmysticspodcast@gmail.com. Or check the show notes for more info.
Caribbean Mystics is created and hosted by Paulina Creaky and Gabrielle Carrard. Theme song is Folktale Juve Rhythm by Umi Marcano.